So today is day 3 of my holiday cookies series, and probably the final video. So far we've talked about the origin of the web cookie and its creator. We've talked about first-party cookies, and today we're going to talk about the dreaded third-party cookie. So in the early 2000s, the web cookie was being super successful at what it was made to do. Like I said before, it was never meant to track people. It was made to store information that made a more pleasant experience for the person browsing or consuming a website's content. But in the early 2000s, some engineers created a company called DoubleClick, and DoubleClick was the first company that would start placing banners at the top of websites. And they realized that they could exploit the architecture of a web cookie and essentially give them the ability to track users from one website to another website to another website to another website. So you can probably see where this went. We now have a web economy, if you will, where when you're browsing sites, if you looked up a particular type of product or something, all of a sudden now you're seeing it on every single page you go to. Well, the reason for that is because third-party cookies. Third-party cookies basically allow companies to purchase ad space on other companies' websites. So picture a website, there's like a little square on the site somewhere that has pictures and images or whatever of a particular type of product. Well, that space is essentially sold, and there's money being made on both sides for someone to be able to display content to you in that slot. And what happens is when you load a company's web page now, that particular slot, when it loads, whichever company is displaying content in that is able to put a cookie in your browser. And a lot of times these cookies are what are called persistent cookies. And a persistent cookie basically is able to track you from one site to another, and it stays in your browser unless you completely clear your cookies out of your browser. This industry of displaying ads on websites is estimated to be like around $200 to $300 billion of an industry. And what was really interesting was because of all the money that was available in this industry, this DoubleClick company eventually in the early 2000s, I think, got purchased by Google for like somewhere between $2 and $4 billion. What's really interesting though is that Google has stated that they are going to essentially, by default, no longer allow third-party cookies to be available in their browsers. And the reason is because third-party cookies got into a lot of trouble because now what started happening where they were using these cookies to track people's browsing behaviors and patterns and preferences and all the data that's behind that for you as the consumer. And they were taking that data and doing things with it that you had no idea about. They were selling it to other companies for huge profits. They were using it to target you in ways that you may not have wanted to be targeted, etc. And what ended up happening was it created a huge privacy concern, which many of you are very familiar with the concerns that you have for privacy on all the different social platforms that you use today. But what ended up happening was policies had to be put in place, and one of the most predominant ones out there is called GDPR, which was a European Union regulation that was put in place. I'm not going to get into details on GDPR in this video, but this is what actually has driven, when you come to a site now, you may see at the bottom something that says, this site uses cookies to offer you a better experience, and click here to accept these cookies, or click here to decline these cookies. And in some cases, they even give you the option to manage what the cookies are allowed to or not allowed to do. The cool thing is that you're actually able to, if you do some quick Googling, where they'll have ads with third-party cookies, you can do some quick Googling for your particular browser that you use, and you can find out how you can actually clear the cookies in your browser. So a lot of that information that's being held onto, you can actually flush that and clear it out. The other problem that third-party cookies created was that hackers were now able to create, for example, false websites that would say like, your password has been compromised, click here to change your password. And you'd go to a website and put in your login information, or potentially your login information would be attempted to be pulled out of your cookie data, and it would basically exploit your personal data for a hacker's gain. So it's always interesting to me to see something that starts out with good intentions and innocent goals. When money gets involved, when power gets involved, when hackers get involved, that type of stuff is able to be compromised so easily and cause a lack of trust with people and the brands that they do business with. So I hope you found this series a little bit interesting, and I hope you learned a little bit more about cookies other than chocolate chip cookies, peanut butter cookies, and oatmeal raisin cookies.